All right, 4.5. Now let's do chapters 55 and 56. We're getting very close to the end. Magwitch is held in jail while he waits for court. Pip hires Jaggers to defend Magwitch when they return to London. Jaggers is upset that Pip didn't think to hide Magwitch's fortune before the police could take it, but Pip's only concern is the health and well-being of Magwitch. Compeyson's body is in the river, along with notes that he planned to turn Magwitch in for a reward from Magwitch's fortune. While Jaggers and Compeyson have continued to act in the interest of collecting riches, Pip no longer seeks out money as a sign of status. Herbert tells Pip that he will leave shortly to work in Cairo, although Pip secretly knows this already as he arranged Herbert's continued work. Cairo, Egypt. So Herbert is going all the way to Egypt. He invites Pip to come live in Cairo with him and Clara, and he awkwardly offers Pip a clerk's position. Pip says he can't make a decision just yet. His mind is focused on Magwitch and a vague something lingering in my thoughts. It's significant that Pip doesn't decline Herbert's offer because it will lower his status, which it will, for Pip is no longer status conscious. Pip is in a time of self-searching. Herbert and Clara are planning to marry. As Clara's father is nearing the end of his life, Mrs. Pocket is delighted by Clara's lack of a family title, and really any family at all. Why would she be delighted by that? I thought Mrs. Pocket was the one obsessed with titles. Maybe I'm mistaken. Wemmick comes to apologize for the failure of the escape plan he organized, realizing Compeyson must have planted rumors that he wasn't in London to entice Wemmick to devise that plan. This news about Compeyson isn't surprising. He was a sly and cunning schemer. Wemmick invites Pip on a walk, which turns out to be a spontaneous wedding for Wemmick and Miss Skiffins. Pip serves as best man. The agent gives Miss Skiffins in marriage. Wemmick tells Pip not to mention the wedding at work, however, reinforcing his strongly divided lives at home and at work. Meanwhile, Magwitch is very sick in a prison infirmary, although he doesn't complain. Pip visits as much as he is allowed. At trial, Magwitch is quickly found guilty of escaping from his sentence in New South Wales and is sentenced to death. He is singled out as a person who almost from infancy had been a defender against the laws. That's that status, that class consciousness thing. That he's low class, so he was bound to break the law. They don't pay attention to the fact that he worked hard down in Australia, that he gave this young man great expectations, that all the good he's done, he's just a bad person to them. Pip petitions any and every authority he can think of to appeal Magwitch's death sentence. He hopes that Magwitch will die naturally before he can be hanged. The officers in prison and other prisoners are kind to Magwitch, and Pip is allowed at his side. 10 days later, on his deathbed, Magwitch is calm and grateful for Pip's loyalty and care. He utters his final words, "I don't complain of pain, dear boy." Before Magwitch dies, Pip whispers in his ear that his daughter is alive, she is a lady, and that he loves her. Magwitch kisses his hand, then dies peacefully. Pip recounts the biblical parable of the two men at the temple, and he prays to heaven for mercy on Magwitch's soul. In this sentence, Dickens pulls out back-to-back similes. There was something charmingly cordial and engaging in the manner in which, after saying, "Now handle," as if, I don't care. Dude just died, I don't care. Finally, it seems as the law has forced Magwitch, who has proven he is a good man with integrity, to become a criminal, which is precisely the commentary Dickens sets out to make. Magwitch responds in court, "My lord, I have received my sentence of death from the Almighty, but I bow to yours." Resigned to his fate both in court and in life, as he is quite ill. After court, the narrator points out that the audience leaves nonchalantly, rearranging their clothes as they might at church or elsewhere. In this society, law has no conscience. The people are unconcerned with the death sentence they've just heard. Moving on to 57. After Magwitch dies, Pip falls extremely ill. He is deeply in debt, and two creditors come to his apartment to arrest him. Pip is so sick he can hardly move and experiences delirious hallucinations. He is unconscious for weeks, and when he awakes, Joe is there. Joe has nursed Pip back to health. Pip is ashamed and feels that he doesn't deserve Joe's loyalty and care, but Joe doesn't hold a grudge. Joe fills Pip on village news. Biddy has taught him how to write, and he writes to her updates, and he writes her to update her on Pip's health. Miss Havisham has died, and left much of her fortune to Estella, and a large amount to Matthew Pocket, while all her other relatives cut tiny amounts. Orlick has been arrested for robbing and attacking Uncle Pumblechook. Pip and Joe become close as Pip recovers, and loses all the pretenses of his former gentleman's life. Pip broaches the subject of Magwitch, but Joe tells Pip that Biddy says not to dwell on unnecessary subjects, echoing Jagger's advice that there are some things best left unsaid. Honesty isn't the ultimate measure of integrity, but rather compassion is, and generosity is. Joe becomes uncomfortable, especially as Pip recovers and begins to walk. Joe begins to address him as Sir once again. Pip is ashamed of how he treated Joe in the past. Joe leaves without telling Pip once Pip is fully recovered. He leaves behind a note that he doesn't want to intrude, and a receipt which has paid all of Pip's debts. He has paid all of Pip's debts. Oh, wow. Although Pip didn't even know Joe knew of them. Pip's return to health has returned their relationship to the tense adult relationship they had after Pip came into his expectations. But Joe still cares for him, taking care of his debts. Pip decides to return to the village to thank Joe and propose to Biddy. He plans to work at the forge or allow Biddy to choose his path. His moral development has now come full circle. When Pip gets home, the town has already heard of his lost fortune. He is treated like a working-class man. For once he had had attention lavished at him, but it doesn't bother Pip. Pumblechook makes an obnoxious speech lamenting Pip's new circumstances and ribbing him for being ungrateful, but Pip just answers that he's come to see Joe. Pumblechook continues on his theme, spreading rumors about Pip's ingratitude. Pip heads to the forge only to find out that Joe and Biddy have just been married. Oh. They're so happy to see Pip, and he thanks them both generously for all they've done for him. He tells them he will sell everything and move abroad to work for Herbert. He plans to earn the money to repay Joe and ask Joe and Biddy not to tell their future child about his ungrateful years. Years later, Pip has become a partner at Clarriker & Company and has repaid his debts. He has remained close to Joe and Biddy despite the distance. Clarriker tells Herbert that it was Pip who made a secret investment in Herbert to allow him to be a partner. The firm has become moderately successful, and Pip wonders why he didn't always believe in Herbert's ability to succeed. And the wrap-up, Chapter 59. 11 years later, Pip returns to visit Biddy and Joe at the forge. They have 2 children, including a young son named Pip. Biddy prods Pip to marry and asks if he still loves Estella. He says no, but he secretly wants to visit Satis. He has heard that Estella's life has been difficult. Drummle abused her, they separated, and Drummle died 2 years ago. When Pip visits Satis, he runs into Estella in the garden, who says it's also her first time back to Satis. The home is her only remaining possession, as Drummle squandered the rest. She has thought of Pip often and regrets throwing his love away. Suffering, she says, has turned her cold heart human. As they walk out together, Pip says he saw no shadow of another parting from her. He saw no shadow of another parting from her. I don't know what that means. Suffering has led to integrity, just as it did for Pip. We don't know how the story ends. The original ending left it less ambiguous, with Pip and Estella not marrying after their meeting. Though Dickens' public was unhappy with that ending, so he rewrote it, leaving the possibility that Pip and Estella might marry, or at least remain friends. And that's the end of the story. So there's a possibility they get together. Exercise Pip's perspective. Write a 3-paragraph essay in response to the question, how is Pip's perspective on love between friends or lovers changed by the end of this book? Use at least 2 pieces of evidence. I took her hand in mine, and we went out of the ruined place, and as the morning mists had risen long ago when I first left the forge, so the evening mists were rising now, and in all the broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me, I saw no shadow of another parting from her. Still don't know what that means. Anyway, end of story. Go take the test. Have a good time.